Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. We are in our Jordan episode for this season. We're in episode 23. My name's Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts, Aaron Gilpin and Colum Coleman. And today we are going to be talking about one of my personal favorite topics because Colum and I have a personal connection to this. We're going to be talking the Cherokee removal.
Yes.
I think you might want to explain that connection because that's
Nope.
and why your favorite.
No.
That's
No,
shouldn't be your favorite.
We're not going to explain
No.
the connection. We're not going to explain the Michael Jordan reference from earlier. We're going to leave our viewers in the dark.
It's episode 23.
If they
You
don't know,
didn't know. It's
It-
episode
it-
23 of season 2. We're almost at the season finale. We're wrapping up. Yeah. Kind of crazy. We're almost at the end of our second season.
Now, as for the connection, both myself and Justin are archaeologists, and we both have a history of working with the Cherokee tribes, specifically the Eastern Band of Cherokee.
And we have taken a number of courses and talked many discussions about the Indian Removal Act, and it's something that is one of our favorites to talk about because we love talking about all of the evils and things that you don't hear about in history class.
Yes.
I don't even think. I think we briefly mentioned it, and then in high school.
In high school U.S. history, there is a mandatory footnote that says you have to mention the phrase Trail of Tears. You do not have to mention what it was about or any of the events leading up to it, which is what we will be covering today.
Ooh, and this is going to be a heated one, and that's why I'm excited because we get to express strong opinions.
I personally, as the research department, have found 3 individuals to condemn to hellfire, one of whom will not be who you think.
That was a fun surprise before we got started.
Yes. With that, we're first going to get into the real kicker here, the thing that kind of causes all the other dominoes to fall, and that is what is officially known as the Indian Removal Act. This act was signed into law by President Andrew Jackson in 1830.
Boo.
Now, he is the first man we will condemn.
Which
we have a lot of reasons.
Andrew Jackson, the thing that aggravates me, and Colum and I got to learn about this, was his life was literally saved by a Cherokee soldier.
Remember that?
Yes.
We kind of reminds me of that British soldier
we do
who
get to
chose
talk
not to
about
kill
it.
Hitler.
The War of 1812 comes up later. After we talk about this act, because this is the act that sets everything else in motion, and we talk about the prelude and the aftermath. So we get the contain your rage. We're just going to explain what the act is, and then watch everything go to hell from it.
All right.
So it is signed into law by Andrew Jackson in 1830. Now, tribal removal is a very controversial topic in the United States at this time. The U.S. House of Representatives only passes the act by 5 votes.
Wow.
Didn't they need was that like 5 votes? Because they need like a majority, right?
Yeah, it's a simple majority, which means that you need 1 vote more for yes than no.
And the thing with this, too, is during this time period in the 1830s, we didn't have nearly as many congressmen or representatives, but 5 is still a massively slim margin.
There was still a well over 100 of these people. Now, a fun fact with this is Tennessee Representative Davy Crockett was a vocal opponent. He was one of the leaders of the efforts to kill this act before it could become law. Davy Crockett is of Alamo fame.
Yeah, it's that Davy Crockett I learned.
It's that man.
That
man. Yes, one of the leading officers at the siege of the Alamo, who effectively won the war. We talk about him in last year's episode on the Republic of Texas, I believe.
A little bit. And I did look up the total votes for that act. It passed the Senate by a vote of 28 to 19. So
Yeah.
actually 2/3 majority.
Yeah.
And the House of Representatives is where they actually had the margin of 101 to 97.
Yeah.
So very slim margins in the House, but the Senate, it passed pretty easily, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because of what tips the balance in the favor of the Indian Removal Act. There is a increase in anti-native sentiment among both Southerners and the military that tips the balance in favor of the Indian Removal Act. A number of veterans of the War of 1812 have now become major politicians, and a lot of the fighting for the War of 1812 was not U.S. troops against British, but rather U.S. and tribal allies against British tribal allies. So the military had rampant anti-Indian sentiment at this time. Andrew Jackson was a officer in the War of 1812, and he shared these views.
Which is unfortunate that it became so pervasive.
Yeah, it becomes quite pervasive, and we go into more detail on that later. But
I should also think this is a good point just to highlight the fact that also while they're fighting these battles, they do have tribal allies, but it was also a period in which there were still a lot of attacks by tribes on white settlers. There was a lot of hostilities. I mean, understandable when a bunch of strangers moved into your homeland 20 years ago, or as recently as 20 years ago, and you're still trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, basically what the war revealed to the U.S. was that its internal borders were not secure, as a number of tribes were resentful of their treatment by the U.S. and were willing to side with a foreign power to get rid of the United States.
Understandable.
And to the United States, to the United States, that was considered unacceptable. But getting back to the act itself granted the president the right to relocate Native American tribes to land west of the Mississippi River. The official wording for this is exchange unsettled lands beyond the Mississippi for Indian lands within existing state borders, which has two key flaws. Number one, it assumes no one is living in Oklahoma. Number two, it assumes that this is somehow a fair and equal exchange, or that the U.S. has the right to make such an exchange.
I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't want to live in Oklahoma either.
I mean, 100%. I don't want to live in Oklahoma. However, it implies, one, that they wanted to push them west of the Mississippi, but two, it doesn't account for any of the people that had previously lived there. And three, it also implies that the land west of the Mississippi has no value, and when they discover it does, things change very quickly.
Yeah, I think things go horribly wrong. This act results in the removal of 46,000 Native Americans to Oklahoma over the next 10 years. Andrew Jackson himself oversees the signing of almost 70 removal treaties. He is, in fact, so enthusiastic about doing this that he delivers a whole speech to Congress about how thrilled he was that the act had passed. And it is the subject of his annual presidential address to Congress on December 6th, 1830.
Dear Congress, I am phenomenal.
He wrote an entire speech about how wonderful it is that we're finally getting rid of all the non-white people.
But it also had double-edged. It was multifaceted because, one, it was getting rid of a non-white population, but two, it was during this time period that the cotton industry was really booming because Jackson himself was a plantation owner and operator. So he had his own biases and his own opinion, having lived in Tennessee, where a lot of the removal actually took place. Because the majority of the removal happened from Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and bits of Alabama and Mississippi. It was the 5 tribes that got boot.
How did Tennessee produce both Davy Crockett and Andrew Jackson?
The world works in mysterious ways, my friend.
For every act of evil, there must also be an act of good.
Well, also, being a hero doesn't pay, and Crockett learned that the hard way, whereas Jackson died of old.
Apparently, being a plantation owner paid.
Yeah. And it's
Guess
fun,
who we're still celebrating on our currency?
$20, baby.
Yeah. Fun fact, though. That actually does bring us into the 3 motivating factors for the act, because it isn't unreasonable. This isn't done out of like illogical hatred. This is done out of systematic oppression.
It's just business, baby.
Yep. Chief reason number 1. There was a huge demand for arable land because cotton industry is booming, and removing the Native Americans frees over 25 million acres of fertile land suitable for cotton plantations.
Which at this time, a lot of tribes, a lot of them adopted agriculture, but they adopted it in small homestead-based agriculture. They weren't doing the mass sharecropping, basically, that these large plantation owners were doing, where they had massive operations.
Yeah. Number 2, there was gold in them there hills.
Oh, that's enough.
Gold,
yeah.
Gold had been found in parts of the Smoky Mountains, and thus access to even a small amount of the yellow rock was enough to send people clamoring over.
Colum, I think I figured out our next controversial topic that we're going to talk about.
Just one moment.
The Black Hills.
The R&D department.
We're going to talk.
R&D department will.
Quick, do a spin in your chair and put on your hat.
Will not be happy with you. And finally, number 3 was there was racial prejudice against the Native Americans. There was a belief that the tribal lifestyle was inefficient and wasteful. It couldn't use the land properly. It didn't use the land properly, and it was actually harmful for the land to be left verdant.
Well, yeah, obviously you have to cultivate on it, otherwise the nutrients just float away, and you're not having a mass plantation. You're just you're hunting. You're farming.
So you're telling me capitalism is the main cause of all of this?
Yes. Aaron.
Again, it's always capitalism.
The logic was that if you are not exploiting a resource to its maximum immediate potential, you are wasting that resource and thus destroying the world.
This idea
of the world by allowing it to continue existing.
This idea of like maximum efficiency also reminds me of how Minecraft players who automate everything for maximum efficiency. Like, it's the same mentality, except this one causes the deaths of how many people.
Players that flatten half their world so they can have a farm, and then proceed to only do that where you can just do vertical.
Also, they end up enslaving entire villagers to.
We don't talk about that.
Oh my god! It is just capitalism. That entire oh my god! I hate it here.
Have your existential crisis elsewhere.
I hate it here, guys.
Anyway, this act leads to the forced removal of the Cherokee in 1838 and 1839. Now, at this point in time, the Cherokee had lived in the interior southeast for hundreds of years. And by the interior southeast, we mean the inland part of Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, etc. The sort of the Smoky Mountains region. To give you a general idea of where we're going to be talking about most of this. Now, we're going to do a little bit of a dive into the history of the Cherokee and white people as we lead up to the removal. So, fun fact: by the time of the American Revolution, so 1775 to 1783. The Cherokee had already lost more than half their territory to encroachment by the British.
And also the fact that the British had this kind of laissez-faire approach to it of like, all right, don't really settle west of the Smokies, but then a bunch of people did, and they're just like, well, I mean, we're not going to kick them off. They put in the effort. It was the whole idea of like land improvement. If you can prove you improve the land value, you can keep it.
Yep. Which,
I hate
there were
this
Native
so
Americans involved, meant you put a signpost out.
Yeah.
And suddenly, everything you could see from that point was yours and not the natives.
There's literally stories of Native Americans going on spiritual journeys or hunting missions or just travel, coming back to a white family on their farm, or in literal, some actual cases, their house, because a lot of them built houses in the European style. They had actual dwellings, and they came back and a white family had just moved in.
Mm-hmm.
That's...
Speaking of building in a European
what
style.
the heck?
The United States of America, since its inception in the 1780s, had been pressuring the native tribes to abandon the tribal lifestyle.
Which is why the 5 civilized nations, or 5, there's a more appropriate term for that, but they're referred to as the 5 civilized tribes. And the reason for that is because they developed written language and they adopted the white man's way. The Cherokee actually were considered one, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, I believe the Seminole, and there's one other one which I really apologize for not knowing off the top of my head.
I think it's Iroquois, but it might not be.
My first thought was here. Okay.
No.
They're all southern. They're southeastern.
They're all that's right. They're all it's like
Chickasaw,
the 5 edwards. They're all clustered together. Justin looks up that supplementary information. We're gonna talk
Chickasaw?
about
it is the Creek.
The Creek.
Yes. The Choctaw, Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, and Chickasaw.
Yep. Well, I gotta give props to the Seminole for being different and not using a letter C.
The Seminole. Okay, so here's the thing. Fun fact for the people in modern day: the Cherokee or the Seminole tribe are the largest private owners of musical memorabilia. And do you know why?
Because they own one very special location.
They own multiple very special locations. They own and operate the Hard Rock Casino franchise.
Yeah.
The Seminole tribe, it is tribally owned. So the Seminole tribe actually generate some of the highest income of any federally recognized tribe in the nation.
Yep.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. It's not just gambling money. They have more business ventures.
Yep.
Good for them.
And so with that, we're gonna come upon our second man tonight that we get to condemn. It's another United States president. It is none other than one Thomas Jefferson.
Never liked him anyway.
Because it is Thomas Jefferson who, in 1803, first proposes relocating all Native Americans across the Mississippi River. It's his idea.
Oh, yeah, you mean the man that also was a slave owner in the South that had also had troubles with Indians during his his presidency.
Yes.
Isn't this also the same guy who sent out Lewis and Clark?
Yes.
Yes.
Who also believed woolly mammoths existed in that territory?
Yes. This is Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd president and the incredibly angry one.
I guess we have had some pretty...
He has this idea after he makes the Louisiana Purchase and basically realizes that now that the U.S. officially owns both sides of the mountains, wouldn't it be great if we were the only people living on both sides of the mountains?
Oh, my.
He framed it as being nice to the Native Americans, because if the Native Americans chose to live outside United States territory, then the United States promised they wouldn't bother them and they wouldn't have to acclimate to U.S. culture immediately.
Immediately, I like how that was added.
It is. He like Jackson has a very much join us or die mentality. Just look at what he did to John Adams when he was serving as John Adams' vice president. The man was downright vicious.
Well, also, to be fair to the people who are listening at home, when you were vice president in this time frame, it was because you lost the election. You came in second.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until later on that you selected your buddy to run as your running mate.
Yes, and in the modern political world, you can imagine just what sort of things that would create.
This is equivalent to Donald Trump being vice president to Joe Biden. And
to be fair,
please do not say the names of current politicians on our show. We are historical. That is not history yet.
Okay, imagine if Hold on, I got a few. Uh, but no, yeah. Imagine. I can imagine that it's probably a good idea that they stopped doing that. The runner-up being vice, because the vice president now actually has duties, whereas
But
previously it was kind of ceremonial, I guess.
John
now
Adams'
that
first year in office was just trying to figure out what to call the president.
yeah, yeah, there's been some interesting things and some changes, but anyway, that's going to bring us to our next big topic here, which is something we've been jumping around a bunch earlier. It's a very thing. Justin's very excited for this one. The War of 1812,
Yes.
which saw the Southerners and the Southern states demand that the U.S. cease dealing with the tribes as nations. The War of 1812 was a war that lasted from 1812 to 1815 between Great Britain and the United States. It saw such things happen as the British sack Washington, D.C.
Burned down
Uh,
the White House, attacked the Congress building. Yeah, it was messy.
yeah, yeah. Um, it it also saw other things happen, like General Andrew Jackson lead the surprisingly successful defense of New Orleans. And if he had just stayed a general and stopped there, he could be remembered as an underdog hero of America and not the absolute horrible human being that he is.
He also fought a battle in a war that was already over.
Yeah. Communications are very sketch in this time period.
Too bad he didn't die. I mean, what?
Yeah.
The,
Uh, so,
yeah.
yeah. And so what happens in this war that's very important for what we're talking about today is um, a lot of the fighting was done with tribal allies. Both the US and Britain had tribal allies, but the existence of British tribal allies in and around US territory served to demonize all Native Americans in the eyes of the American public. Basically, how dare anyone stand against us, especially people that we have allowed to live as encapsulated nations within our borders? The American public's view was that they should be grateful we have allowed them to continue existing
Well,
and
so
be mad for all the horrible things we've done to them.
so part of this, part of the reason why this ended up becoming such a big issue with the nations being represented as tribal nations versus just political entities within it actually is because of legal purposes and legality. During this time frame, there were a lot of conflicts between the tribes and locals to the point where in some cases, the tribes would people or tribal people would commit crimes. The indigenous would commit crimes, attacking the white folks, and then go back to their nation, and they were not able to be prosecuted under United States law, and it became even further prior to removal because they actually tried to legislate their way into this property by suing and arguing certain rights. And one of the ways Georgia specifically did this in a lot of ways was they tried to charge tax and tried to reclaim the property via tax. They would have the tribal nations sign these tax documents promising to pay tax when many of them couldn't read or write. And that actually leads into someone we talk about a little bit further down, Chief John Ross. And we'll talk about him later.
Yeah. Because yeah, we'll talk about him later. Because right now, we come to the second reason why we get to condemn Thomas Jefferson, and that is a little document that he signed called the Compact of 1802. Now, following the War of 1812, Southerners called on the United States government to fulfill this compact. What the Compact of 1802 states was essentially that the U.S. government promises the southern states to essentially all states to disavow all tribal lands, all legal status of Native American tribes, and remove all living Native Americans from the borders of the U.S. Like we said earlier, getting rid of the natives was Thomas Jefferson's idea.
God damn this man.
The Cherokee, however, have a counter to this. They demand that the U.S. honor the Treaty of Hopewell. which was signed in 1785. And what the Treaty of Hopewell did, acknowledged in perpetuity the sovereignty and borders of the Cherokee Nation.
Ah, there you go.
And so
They
the U.S.
signed
is
a compact. Well, they signed a treaty.
And so the U.S. is the federal government is stuck in limbo where they can't act because if they act against the Native Americans, they violate the Treaty of Hopewell and effectively declare war. If they act against the southern states, well, the southern states are quite uppity, and that's how you lose re-election.
I'm just saying, maybe they should have. No, could have burned him down a few decades earlier.
Yeah, and so what ends up happening is the Cherokee realize that paperwork is a great way to stalemate the federal government.
God, I love that. I love it.
They proceed to adopt U.S.-style legal customs as a means of protection.
Which is arguably one of the reasons why they're considered a civilized tribe, because they took on the Western approach. And yeah, they took on the U.S. legal process, which in some ways legitimized them because they started playing the game from the United States' like they started playing the game the same way.
Yeah.
In which a lot of tribes didn't do before because they didn't quite embrace it or understand it in that.
Yeah. But the Cherokee have sort of figured it out, and John Ross, who is the principal chief of the Cherokee at this time, he realizes how effective of a tool this is, and he actually starts winning. He actually starts to beat the U.S. at its own game, to the point that like the U.S. really starts hating him. One of the things he does is he forms the Cherokee Triumvirate and negotiates the Treaty of 1819. Now, the Cherokee Triumvirate consisted of 3 major Cherokee leaders. First off is Principal Chief John Ross, and then under him are 2 men, Charles Hicks and Major Ridge. Sorry, Major Ridge. I should say that more clearly. And with the Treaty of 1819, this sort of begins a series of legal actions that the Cherokee undergo to effectively block the United States from taking their land.
Yeah, that's where John Ross really comes into play. And John Ross, for those who don't know, is a man who is white but ended up becoming a major player in the tribe and in the group. And he basically took a lot of the Cherokee, and had them pool their money together, start buying land legitimately, started protecting them by adopting the U.S. legal system, and also at the same time, they started developing their own syllabary so they could have their own written language.
And the syllabary does belong to a man named Sequoyah, who does create was the syllabary, or what would be colloquially known possibly as like the Cherokee alphabet.
I did that one. I did learn about in high school.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. They produce their own, they produce their own newspaper in the Cherokee language. They do a bunch of things.
That's the Cherokee Phoenix, correct? Or what's the name of the paper?
Phonics.
I do not actually remember.
Yeah, I think it is the Cherokee Phoenix.
Yeah, and so the Cherokee Phoenix, and even though I forgot to write down in our notes, and I apologize for that. The Treaty of 1819. What that did is it forces the U.S. government to acknowledge improvements to the land made by Native Americans, i.e., it forces the government to acknowledge that there is a house here that counts as improvement. Therefore, this land belongs to these people. Things like that, and that was the beginning of legal protections, because, like we said earlier, a lot of the time, people would come in, steal the Cherokee stuff, and then claim they built it. And you can no longer do that because there's an official record with the United States government and with the Cherokee Nation that says this house has been here for 20 years. It was built by this man. The land it is on belongs to him. Um, they establish a new capital, a formal capital, in 1825 called New Echota, which is located near Calhoun, Georgia. So they have a set capital, which is something that Western nations feel is necessary to be understood as a sovereign nation. You can't be nomadic or semi-nomadic. You have to have a single fixed settled point at which all authority radiates, or from which all authority radiates.
And that's
So,
exactly what they done did.
yeah, so they did that. Then Ross serves as the head of the Cherokee Constitutional Convention, which presented the United States government with the written Cherokee Constitution in 1827. And what I love about this move is not only does it give the Cherokee, a constitutional government, which the United States sees as a distinctly American thing, but they did it by holding a constitutional convention, which, fun fact, was was a political invention of the United States. The United States of America was the only nation to do this.
Well, to be fair, they wanted to make a point of, look at us, look how democratic we are. We are hashing out the details as a collective whole.
Yeah, yeah. We are American, but not. Please go away.
Yeah, they're like, look at how similar we are to you.
Yeah, it's great. But just until then, that was something only the Americans did. And so the fact that the Cherokee did it really, really takes the wind out of the sails for the whole Pocahontas savages chant that's been going around Georgia for like the last like 20 years at this point.
Yeah. And this also ties in, I know I talked briefly about the stuff that Georgia has done. Well, the Cherokee National Council announced its refusal to cede land to anyone or to the governments. And one of the things they did was they made the sale of Cherokee land to a non-Cherokee an executable offense. You could sell it from one person to another within the tribe. However, if you did it to anyone outside, they would execute you. And Georgia's legislature tried to basically use their legislative powers against the tribe, and they tried to actually just keep passing laws that were more restrictive, and they tried abolishing the government. But the thing is, they had no authority, and this is one of the fun fact, this is one of the many aspects of the South that we would think of that was more states' rights. Georgia sued the U.S. government for the right to abolish tribal autonomy and authority. They tried to get rid of the sovereignty of the Cherokee by suing the U.S. government, demanding states' rights. It was one of the first times that a state had gone beyond what even the government tried.
Yeah.
Good God, Georgia, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, this is the biggest what the fuck Georgia moment.
Georgia just, at this point, Georgia was just like, we don't care if it doesn't make sense. We just want to do it.
It's called a pretext for what would happen, 30 years later?
Yeah.
Georgia was like, at this point, like, acting like Thanos. At first, they didn't care as much. Now that they've got their attention, they're going to burn them with a smile.
Yeah. Georgia for this.
But remember, guys, only think of the
19th
Georgia
century
peaches.
is the spoiled stepchild of America.
Yeah, but now everybody's like, oh, Georgia's all nice and pretty with the peaches.
Yeah.
Florida, Georgia.
My favorite part of Georgia's attempts to get rid of the Cherokee, aside from declaring the Cherokee do not exist while they are still living there, is that they decided that, well, the Cherokee still exist and are living on the land. They're going to hold a lottery to give away the Cherokee land.
Yeah, so one of the things that they found out in their law process and in trying to do this above ground, but like still illegal, was they couldn't sell the land directly because it was pre-inhabited. However, what they did was they made the land available for a public lottery, which you would enter your name in and you could win the chance to buy the land.
Chance to buy it.
It's a lottery, Aaron. However, this is an 1820s lottery, where the only way you can enter the lottery is if you are a white male landowner.
Listen, the Powerball was weird back then. That's all I'm going to say.
You mean I want a parcel of land outside of Atlanta?
Listen, there are a lot of weird things with lotteries. Like you have to do math problem to win in Canada. It's so fun.
Well, and that's basically what this was you had to do a literacy test to enter the lottery, and like you really it was very targeted. It meant they were going after them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's gonna take us to back around to Andrew Jackson, because in this timeline, once again, he wins the presidential election in 1828 and takes office. Now, Jackson had served as a general alongside the Cherokee in the War of 1812. Once again, if he had just stopped there, if he had not pursued further ambition, he could be remembered as an American hero for the Battle of New Orleans.
Which also, Tecumseh saved his life.
Yep. So naturally, his first act as president of the United States is to put a stop to all this madness, to end the question of, indigenous rights east of the Mississippi, by declaring that the removal of the Native Americans was a national objective to be undertaken with all due haste. You saved my life. Now die.
It's important to highlight this idea of manifest destiny was really pervasive and really starting to come into its fruition. At this point, this was after Jefferson had done the Louisiana Purchase. So the U.S. owned, quote, quote, a huge tract of land after they purchased it from France. So now, well, we have this great big backyard now, but if only these darn Indians weren't on it.
Yep. Yeah, because effectively what ended up happening was the Native American tribes were splitting America down the middle, just like the mountains, because that's the only place they could survive.
Because they were in New Orleans, the Americans were in New Orleans at this time, and like up the Mississippi. But
the Americans effectively have control of like New Orleans and Chicago, and
Chicago
New
did
York
not exist at this time, bud. Sorry.
But I'm just saying, like we effectively have control of like the points on both sides of the mountains.
Aaron, your audio's messed up.
I thought he was just coughing.
No. Anyways,
well, someone attempts to find Aaron's voice.
The ghost inside his head.
We'll move to the next part, which this concentrated or this concerted effort by Andrew Jackson results in John Ross bringing the matter before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Which is one of two times in 2 years that they went to the Supreme Court to make a judgment, which is absolutely fucking awful, because both times they get shit on.
The first instance is 1831's Cherokee Nation v. Georgia. During this time, the Supreme Court declared that the Cherokee Nation was a nation under the tutelage and protection of the United States, that they did in fact exist, that they were protected by the federal government.
However, it did not do anything to actually address the grievances that the tribes had, one, and two, the way in which they declared them to be under the tutelage and protection basically meant it was like a protectorate state.
Yep. Yeah. What the ruling amounts to is
that came through.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Aaron's voice is better. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna finish the ruling, then I'll let you speak. What the ruling amounts to is that Georgia did not have the right to take tribal lands away from the Cherokee. However, the United States is not going to do anything about it because the United States is about to take the tribal lands away anyway, so what does it matter?
The only thing that needs to be said is fuck Andrew Jackson.
Yeah.
That is effectively the stance of the ruling on Cherokee Nation v. Georgia.
They should tear down his mausoleum. That's right, guys. He has a mausoleum. Like a very fancy one.
Mausoleum.
Fuck Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, which
Wasn't even that good of a president.
I will
In general.
I will say to this day that if you do visit his homestead, the Hermitage, they do a really good job speaking to the downsides and importance of like the slaves who worked and lived on the farm, and they talked about how they were the backbone. So they've addressed a lot of it there, but Andrew Jackson, horrible person.
Takes some sledgehammers to it.
And it's a mausoleum, so you can't pee on it, Aaron.
Aaron.
That's never stopped anyone.
We are not.
Also, where did you suggest that?
We're not going to talk about defecation or desecration of the dead.
Also, why did you talk?
Places.
Yeah, no,
we will not be pursuing
All
that.
right, let's continue on,
encouraging
Let's
that.
continue on.
I am going to start a fight here. The second case is Worcester versus Georgia, 1832.
Worcester. Although this might be different.
That is not what is written on the page. So help me God. This is English. Speak it right.
Man, we are so all over the.
We are going to we're going to have a mental breakdown before we.
That one was out of
part of this
field,
which I am okay with because as the R&D department, I did not like doing this. I did not like the amount of knowledge.
Well,
I will talk to you about anything other than
anything.
I wonder who suggested this topic. Well, anyways, the Supreme Court case declared that the Cherokee actually were a sovereign nation, despite Georgia's attempts to do everything except that, because Georgia had violated their sovereignty and infringed on multiple federal treaties.
Yep.
What was their punishment?
Well, their punishment was quite simple. Andrew Jackson read the report from the U.S. Supreme Court that Georgia had violated federal treaties and said, well, as the commander-in-chief, it's on me to enforce these treaties and these rulings. So I'm not going to. Keep going, Georgia.
Yep.
He actually says if no one enforces these, your rulings, then they shall emerge stillborn. He said that to the Supreme Court.
So Andrew Jackson was all for abortion. Got it.
Yeah, but this case ended up being the foundation for future ideas of tribal sovereignty for the rest of the 19th and into the 20th century. So this case was really foundational and fucked over a lot of people.
Yeah.
Again, are we sure? But we're going against the sledgehammers.
Mm-hmm. No, we are against it.
But speaking of treaties, there were two different groups within the Cherokee, and this is in 1835 when the Cherokee, after the law had been enacted and the conversations of being forced to be removed were starting to be had because the U.S. government gave them 1 year to prepare and said, okay, you have this time, prepare, get ready, you are going to be leaving. They knocked on someone's door, said, hey, you're out, we got new tenants coming in, get out. And there were two different groups within the Cherokee, and this is what led to a lot of modern divisions within the Cherokee nations, because there are currently 3 Cherokee official nations. There's the Eastern Band in North Carolina, there's the Cherokee Nation, and then, oh my god, why am I forgetting the third one? Oh, I feel so bad. But
I don't have the name for you right now, Justin. I apologize.
No, but anyways, what this division ended up coming from is there were 2 groups of Cherokee. The group who wanted to stay and the group who just wanted to cut their losses and just take the money and go. Because they were offered some small settlement, but it was nothing compared to the actual values of their land.
Kituwa Band.
The Kituwa Band. Okay.
The Kituwa Band.
That explains
also,
why.
Which alongside the Cherokee Nation lives in Oklahoma.
And what ended up happening was there were 2 groups, one who wanted to stay, one who wanted to go. Of those who wanted to stay was their chief, John Ross, who was the principal chief of all the smaller bands of Cherokee, because it wasn't one centralized unit. And what ended up happening was the group who wanted to leave wanted to take the promised $5 million and move their stuff and move their possessions, they signed the treaty without John Ross's consent.
Yes, this treaty, which is signed in 1835, is known as the Treaty of New Echota. It is signed by Major Ridge, one of the members of the Cherokee Triumvirate. He does so without having the authority to speak or act on behalf of the Cherokee Nation. He does so without the knowledge of the Cherokee Nation.
Yeah, so he does it. He speaks out of turn and basically signs it. It's like if I walked up to Arian and I said, "Hey, sign this treaty," and then go, "Okay, the United States signed the treaty." I mean, he was a chief, to be fair.
Yeah.
But
he was a leader. It's basically walking up to like a random senator and having them declare that the United States surrenders all territory.
And the United States, on their part, after having received this signed treaty, goes, "All right, we got the authority. Let's move on out." And the Cherokee went, "Hold on, that wasn't actually us," and they started protesting the treaty. And John Ross ended up gathering 2,174 votes to oppose the treaty, which ended up being ratified by the U.S. Senate by one vote.
Yeah.
One. There were 48 senators. One vote.
Yeah. That is how divisive and controversial Indian removal is at this time. And also just shows you just on how shaky the legal grounds for this treaty were, that enough of the Senate, which was very much in favor of the Removal Act just 5 short years ago.
28 to 19, and now you're talking 25 to 24.
Yeah. This shows just how shaky that is for them, that they all acknowledge that this treaty probably isn't legal under any interpretation of the law, but we're going to try and enforce it anyway. A fun fact of the treaty is I just love listing out all the things that it promises because the Cherokee get none of them.
Yeah, no.
So, number 1, $5 million to be given to the tribe. Number 2, compensation for buildings and possessions you have to leave behind. Number 3, the U.S. will pay the cost for relocation. They will pay the cost of your move.
Which, can I take a small aside here? I know I'm taking a lot of time with this, but
no, please do. I don't want to talk about the last part.
So, the cost of relocation, right, includes all the cost it would take to hire out traders, pay for food, pay for travel. And can you guess just what happened with that money? It was paid out, by the way. It was paid out to people that upcharged the food. They were buying rotten food at markets for sub costs, saying it cost 3 times as much, and pocketing all of that money. Yeah. Which is why the Trail of Tears was so deadly and caused so many people to get sick, was because they were being fed awful food. They had the full capacity to carry enough food with them to keep them all the way to Oklahoma. They could have purchased new food along the way, but that did not happen. In fact, that money was used in some cases actually appropriately, where the sick and elderly were shipped, quite literally by ship, to New Orleans and up the river. They were transported most of the way, but that's why a lot of them had to walk by foot, was because this money was just blown away. And it was the people that they hired. There were Cherokee who could have fully supported that contract, who could have had the business connections. No, they gave it to white businessmen in Georgia, white businessmen in Tennessee, who just extorted the hell out of it.
I.e. the people who hate them and want to get rid of them by any means necessary.
Jesus fucking Christ.
A fun fact, too, is the people they have escorting the Cherokee are comprised primarily not of U.S. soldiers, although there is a strong U.S. military presence, but of the local state militias drawn from people who lived on the borders of Indian lands.
Yes.
So, people who are going to treat you nicely.
God.
Although my personal favorite in the list of promises that the U.S. makes is the final one, which is the United States promised to respect tribal sovereignty and defend the Cherokee in their new territory. Ha 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 ha.
I'm really
That's the
beginning to see
best
a
bad joke
theme.
I've ever heard.
So this is where U.S. Foreign policy first started.
Yay!
If
It's
you think
terrible.
that's a joke, you haven't been paying attention.
Uh, it's a joke because it's the first time. We're near enough to the first time.
Fucking hell.
Now, the one of the things with the people who sign this treaty is on the surface, it's a pretty good deal. And the people who sign it, well, they don't have the authority to speak for the tribe. They are not evil people. They are not trying to condemn their tribe to the Trail of Tears, to horror and suffering. They are simply people who feel that the US government, the state governments, they will never relent, and that all hope is lost, and that staying here will only prolong suffering. These are simply people who have lost hope.
Yeah.
And they end up getting like everyone killed.
God, I mean, let's just talk about the soldiers, eh? Because it was beautiful what happened.
Yeah. Before we do, there's just one minor point.
Mm-hmm.
With the 2,174 signatures, this is enough to prove that the majority of the tribe is against the treaty, because at this time the Cherokee tribes, all the bands, form about 16,000 people in total.
Wow.
And if you can get that, and if you can get what is effectively an eighth of your entire population to sign something saying this is wrong, you probably have the majority of the population on your side. John Ross does continue to fight the treaty and forced removal until 1838, and 1838 is when we get our surprise individual that we get to condemn. It is none other than President Martin Van Buren, a man known primarily for sideburns, I believe.
Oh, wait.
He was also the first and only U.S. president to not speak English as his first language.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Martin Van Buren. Van Buren. He's got a Dutch name and spoke Dutch German.
Yep. Yeah,
Was
that's
he not
right.
So he was born in the States, though.
Yep,
Yeah.
in New York.
Yes. Yeah, he is born in the state of New York. I believe he is born to immigrants, and they teach him their language as his native tongue.
Okay.
He then learns English in school. Thus, English is his second language.
Yes.
Yeah. So Van Buren in 1838, he is the man who finally lets the hammer fall. He gives the order that the United States military will enforce the Indian Removal Act and the Treaty of New Echota. He is the man who orders the U.S. Army into tribal lands to force the Cherokee out at gunpoint.
Yes.
This task falls to Major General Winfield Scott, who is our bonus condemnation for today. As General Scott, when he arrives, he gives orders that the Cherokee are to be treated humanely and to be, in the process of removal. These orders are completely ignored by everyone under his command. They're almost unilaterally ignored, and he does not restore order or authority in the defense of the Cherokee. So I don't know if he's incompetent or negligent. Either way, you're condemned.
Yeah. Jesus.
Bonus. Yeah. Because let's get into some of the wonderful things the U.S. does once they get on the tribal lands. Step 1 of removal. The U.S. goes door to door, forcing entire families out of their homes at gunpoint into corral pens and stockades. These are effectively spiked fences out in the middle of an open area.
Holding pens, so they couldn't escape.
Yeah, they are packed in like sardines and housed like wild hogs.
And part of the reason they started collecting them in cages is because many people understood that removal was coming. Like I said, they were given a year to prepare, and
it's been 3 years since then.
Yeah, and they once the soldiers started knocking, many of them fled into the forest and woods, and they actually had to be chased out. And that's part of the reason why Cherokee, North Carolina, still maintains some of the actual population of Cherokee.
Yep.
Seriously, at no point did anyone think, "Are we the baddies?"
No,
at no
Hans.
point.
I think they just knew and were okay with it.
The American way.
Yeah. The Cherokee were held in these stockades for up to 5 months before the U.S. government would move them.
Lovely.
5 months.
Yeah.
And this was what? Let's see. If I
this would have been circa June 1838.
Starting in June for 5 months.
Yeah.
In Georgia heat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which again, these are stock. There's no covers above them.
There's no roof, and the body heat alone is enough to raise the temperature by, over a dozen degrees.
And many people were left without any of their possessions, but many of them did have possessions. They just had small possessions. A small book, a bundle of family heirlooms, important prayers. Like, they had a lot of small items that you had to carry because there were no beasts of burden. There were no horses. There were no carts.
Yep. And they were then forced to march 1,000 miles in the span of only 4 months. Fun fact: it was winter because most of the marching, most of the trail began in September. We're gonna march you through the freaking mountains in the winter.
Yep. And obviously this ended up becoming known as the Trail of Tears, but the Cherokee refer to it as the Trail in Where They Cried, because there
trail
were
where they
lots
cried.
of
Yep.
crying, a lot of tears.
Yep. And the reason it is known as such is because remember how we said there's about 16,000 Cherokee in total?
Yeah.
4,000 to 5,000 of these 16,000 Cherokee die on the trail. And the 4,000 number is the most conservative estimate I could find, meaning that at minimum, 1/4 of the population was murdered.
Yes. Including the wife of their principal chief, John Ross.
Yep. And these deaths were due to exposure, disease, and starvation. Gee, I wonder why.
You remember how I said that they were given spoiled, rotten food when they were given food? Yeah, that's exactly the reason.
And were held in, animal pens for 5 straight months in the middle of summer. Yeah. Wonderful things. Wonderful, wonderful things.
But remember, kids, we're the land of the free, home of the brave.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, and the route
Unless you are someone whose heritage is being mocked by the Atlanta Brave.
Yeah, I was going to say the utter irony because, that was Cherokee land.
Yeah.
The route that they took went through Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and Arkansas. They couldn't take a straight route. They took a mostly overland route that ended up going as close as they could. They ended up actually going through a lot of times St. Louis, which is kind of crazy to think that they went that far north.
You'll see here in Illinois markers for where the trail passed through.
Yeah, some pass through the southern part of Illinois. Just they were forced to go so far around.
If I remember correctly, there's actually one near where I grew up. There's a marker, and it's not southern Illinois. It's border Illinois and Indiana, like central.
Yeah.
It's absurd that anyone would have to go that way just to get to Oklahoma.
People are making money selling the rotten meat at 5 times the price.
Yeah, this is capitalism's fault.
Yeah.
Or I mean, what isn't?
Yeah.
What isn't capitalism's fault now?
The conditions on the trail are so bad that Chief Ross actually petitions General Scott to allow him to oversee the removal process. because things are going so wrong, so many people are dying. And General Scott actually allows Ross to oversee the final 13 detachments of Cherokee that are escorted across the trail. But it's just imagine that the conditions are so horrible that you are begging your oppressor to allow you to lead the oppression, just because you know by the mere fact that it's you, it'll somehow not be as bad.
I will say, I think one of the most beautiful things to come of this was at the end. When they arrived, the 3 signatories of the Treaty of New Dakota were killed. Major Ridge, John Ridge, and Elias Boudinot. They received the death penalty under Cherokee law forbidding the sale of tribal lands.
Yep.
And if they weren't killed based on that law alone, they would have been killed by the many people who were very upset by the conditions and everything they experienced. Rightfully so, in my opinion.
Yeah. 2-part frontier justice, 1 part legal precedence.
3 parts, beautiful irony, like coming full circle.
Yep.
We're gonna live to see like the 200th anniversary of this event.
Yep. They should do a march for
it. Well, maybe an honorary one, but like you would really need tribal support.
An honorary march, I'm thinking we do like a ceremonial march where they get to march back and just take over Georgia.
You know what? Georgia could probably do with a regime change.
But, Georgia's not fans of insurrectionists or, people trying to overthrow established governments or anything.
Yeah,
they don't support that.
Repeatedly.
Well, when it's against them.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyway, ever since the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee Nation has resided with Oklahoma, as has the Kiowa Band of Cherokee. Some of the Cherokee did escape capture by the U.S. Army. These Cherokee came together to form what is now known as the Eastern Band of Cherokee in North Carolina. Alongside the Kiowa and the Cherokee Nation, the Eastern Band is currently an officially recognized tribe by the U.S. government. They were, despite going against the United States and staying in Eastern lands, the Eastern Band does receive formal recognition. The government has given up trying to forcibly move them.
Yay! Finally. Yeah. One of the interesting things too, there's 2 things that I find kind of neat. Is one, the whole Trail of Tears happened, but one of the positives of that came out of it was they managed to transport the Eternal Flame from New Dakota all the way to the brand new capital in Oklahoma. And after the Eastern Band gained their official recognition, there were a number of Cherokee who actually took a portion of the Eternal Flame and returned it to Cherokee homeland.
Yeah.
The Eternal Flame. I didn't know about this.
Cherokee mythology. There's lots of great resources out there to read up on it.
Yeah. I mean, I knew a little bit, but I guess I didn't know. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. They really need to teach this shit in school.
And personally, I do love the story of the Eternal Flame just because I don't know why, but I like sacred fire stories.
And we have seen it. We have seen it firsthand. The one that was brought to the Eastern Band.
I mean, to be fair, we always think like a fire eventually goes out. So like when something like that is actually still be able to be maintained is honestly a feat beyond comparison.
Well, a subgroup within the Cherokee are quite literally the fire people. Yeah. They have a fire nation, basically.
No.
Not like that.
Aaron, there's a fun little parallel for you to get your Roman on. The Romans had a sacred flame mythos as well with the
fire virgins, right?
Yeah, the fire of the temple, the Vestal Virgins. When that fire burns out, Rome shall fall.
Oh yeah, that's right.
When Rome falls, the world shall fall.
Wait a minute, good thing Rome's still here.
Yeah, but
despite these ruins in my background.
Yeah. Today, the Trail of Tears exists as a National Historic Trail. The National Historic Trail stretches from Tennessee to Oklahoma, and along the way, there are various posting signs and information centers that detail the removal of the Cherokee from 1838 to 1839. So it is remembered. The Wilderness Trail exists as a as a permanent mark on the land. So that basically no matter what they teach in school, this act can never be fully erased from history, because dear God, did they not teach this to me? Thank you, Virginia.
Oh, I'm sure Georgia doesn't teach this either.
I will say, from my Illinois perspective, we did learn about the Trail of Tears, but it was watered down significantly.
Yeah, especially, God, they talk more about Texas history than they do this.
Yeah.
Because all the books that are put up given to high school, they're all published. Yeah, that's not problematic at all, probably.
Especially after Texas was passing certain legislation. But on that note, I think this is actually a beautiful point that we wrap up the Cherokee Removal Act. It's one of the heaviest topics we talked about. I mean, there's a lot of repercussions that are still in effect today. I mean, we talked about the 3 separate bands of Cherokee Indian currently. It's a really important topic, and it's something that I think is important, especially as schools are no longer teaching it.
Yeah, especially in an age where states are trying to ban and curate education to be very pro-American.
Yeah.
And so with that note, if you would like to prove to me that the 3-day depression spiral that this caused was in fact worth it, please like and subscribe on this video so that we know that doing this is something you guys are interested in and is something we should do more of in the future, because these are very heady topics. They're not easy to listen to. They're even harder to research. And
but it should be done.
Support means the most to us when it comes from doing something like this.
We don't like to talk about it, but that's the reason why, because it makes us uncomfortable. And
the uncomfortable conversations are the ones that need to be had.
Yeah, you can't forget it, because if you do, it doesn't.
History that goes unlearned is destined to repeat itself. I think is the bit of wisdom to impart. So thank you guys for watching.
Bye. Support us.